Welcome to the weekly Secure Threat Insights group discussion. We're going to jump right in, and we've got a number of accomplishments to highlight. So please take a look at those. 13.5 is, really picking up steam. We've got a lot of follow-ups there. So Matt's got the first agenda item. It's just kind of.
Yeah, I cheated. I had it as read only, but
stuck it in there.
this actually, so it came out of a conversation I was having this morning with Cindy Blake, our product marketing manager, and kind of a broader discussion around how we talk externally about our security tools. And one of the challenges is a lot of people don't know that GitLab has what is quickly becoming sort of like best in class in a lot of ways. And the analysts look very favorably at what we're doing. And she made a really good point. Vulnerability management is maybe not a term that resonates with engineers that are not like security focused necessarily, like on a security team. But that's how we talk about like the MR security widget and all of these sort of shifted left scanning stuff. So her thinking was maybe we need a better name for that and potentially talk about this messaging a little bit differently. To kind of say the reverse too, if you didn't know that the MR security widget was part of vulnerability management, it makes it more difficult to find in the documentation. So the ask is basically, as an engineer, if you didn't work at GitLab and you didn't know that this is what we called part of vulnerability management, if you were looking at all these scanning tools and had this way to see potentially caught vulnerabilities in your workflow, like what would you call that? We don't have to do this interactively. It was just more, I kind of wanted to explain it. So if you have any thoughts or suggestions, just kind of trying to crowdsource some ideas and maybe we'll end up doing something with that soon.
Cool. Yeah, it will be hard. We're already GitLab biased, I believe. I know what vulnerability management is, so.
Hey, maybe ask a friend, put it on Twitter. Oh, sorry about that. Was that, you said make a poll?
Maybe we can create a poll in our Slack channel.
Yeah, that's a great idea. In fact, I'll take that as my action item.
I like the idea of asking outside of GitLab too. I think we all have a pretty big network of engineers that we could get their opinions on, because we've all been very GitLab for GitLab. Great question, though. All right. So, do you want to move on? Is there anything else on that one? Okay. Since Alan has gone and kicked all kinds of butt with our Jira issue creation MVC and has a really great approach on how to bring value to our customers fast, I wanted to add this agenda item to see how we can all contribute to this. We've got bandwidth in 13.5, especially for the front-end team. I know that, Alan, what you've proposed is not exactly what was in the design issue, but I think it's mostly a question then for Matt and Andy around, what areas do we still want to try and focus changes or our time on in 13.5, if any. Otherwise, we can look forward and start to, focus more on breaking down things like the book status updates or manual vulnerability creation, things like that.
Yeah, the one thing I've added today as a part of this spike investigation, I added in visibility. Maybe it's not really the best place to put it, but I put the general idea after what the MVC should look like, and it's split it into three parts, and these are very similar to the parts that we initially thought for the original implementation, with the creating Jira issue internally and then linking them. So the first one is configuring. Nothing has changed in the MVC. In the MVC I've created from what is in the designs, because it's the same. There's no change at all. I initially thought maybe we could simplify it, like saying I said about this input field, but after short investigation, it made no sense because it's just simpler to just render the drop down. And in my demo, I was using radio buttons because I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to improve it. But yeah, it's actually, it will look the same with drop downs. The second one is allow user to create Jira issue. Like on the single vulnerability page, we need to take a look at other pages when we can create issues, but I believe we could start with this one as a first item. The only thing that needs to be discussed maybe is how to relate issue between Jira and the single vulnerability, because it's hard actually. If you just do like click and it will create an issue in Jira, there's no way that we can get that link back. So we need to either ask the user to bring us the link to the Jira issue that they were just created, or we can somehow hack it or just add append to the string in summary, like GitLab v12 something, the ID of the vulnerability, and then we can easily search through vulnerabilities, through issues created for a given vulnerability in Jira. So that's a second approach. That will be the easiest one because we already have the way to display Jira issues in GitLab. So we just reuse the component that is used there, and we're going to just present that in related issues component. So.
Alan, I was curious, does Jira, it's been a long time since I looked at them, do they have any sort of like callback URL where if we were to pass that in the query string that on submit, we could actually get a ping back to like a webhook or something on our side?
I'm pretty sure they have, because the whole, like the applications that they're allowing to create, the whole third-party integrations are based on that. But this will, I believe this will either require lots of work on the configuring the Jira instance, or we'll need to officially register the add-on to Jira and go to the to the process of to be able to quickly do that. That's what I know from what I did with Jira.
Gotcha. Okay. I was curious because I've seen, it's not very common. I think it was Digital River that used something like this, where you could actually provide in the inbound query string a callback URL parameter, and whatever you put in that particular, whatever the value was, whenever you finish the form submission, it would actually just make a ping to that URL. So there wasn't any configuration necessary, so you could put anything you wanted inbound. I didn't know if Jira had something like that.
I'll definitely check that, but as far as I know, they did not have something like that. Yeah.
Sorry, one more question on that one. So I saw in your demo, it looks like, could the user still, after they've created the Jira issue, could they just grab the new issue link and paste it in manually still?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay. I mean, I think that's great for an MVC.
Yeah.
It's an area that we might want to look to improve in the future, so you can create separate issues for that if you decide it's outside of the MVC.
I think that would be the MVC, is the user goes and just has to manually take the created link,
the link over,
paste it in exactly, and then what Alan started with saying, if we do scanning of the Jira instance and look for, I don't know, like the identifier of a vulnerability inside, because I assume we're appending that into the description somewhere, then to me, that's a second iteration.
Okay. So Alan, I think this is an amazing spike. I think what you did here as far as creating the implementation plan is exactly what the template for technical spikes asks for. And it's going to be very clear for whoever comes through to help do the planning breakdown to look at this and help create the issues. So thank you and nice work on that.
Thank you.
So moving forward, you know, we did already create a couple of sub epics under the parent epic that I think we should adjust to fall into that. I've asked Daniel to help do the front end planning breakdown. Whether Alan, if you want to take this and run with it, or if you guys feel like it would be good to have somebody else take a look at your plan and give it sort of a second set of eyes and how they would break it down. I'll leave that up to you and the backend team to decide. So I guess it's just a question now for my net because Alan's the one who created this spike. But given our planning breakdown questions and the progress that we've made, do you guys both feel confident that we are ready to take that spike, the progress that Alan's made, and use that as the source of our planning breakdown, and then go right into refinement because we want to start getting this kicked off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier if Alan creates the implementation issues, then we will probably check the implementation issues anyway.
Okay. Alan, are you cool with that?
Yeah, that's okay. Sure.
I will still ask Daniel to go through this and create the front end ones, but obviously to reach out to you and collaborate based on the plan that you put out in the spike.
Yeah, I believe as soon as Daniel will see the what's in the spike description, I actually did pretty basic how front-end work could be splitted, so he can just take a look, and that I hope that will be helpful for him.
But have you just do it? But I think it would be good, like you said, it'd be helpful for someone to go through it and ask questions as early as possible. Awesome. Well, this is great. Thank you so much, Alan. It's really impressive. And there's the demo. So if you haven't seen that yet, take a look. I think we all have. And then planning breakdown. We still have about 10 minutes of this call. So I know we have a smaller audience, but I'd like to start looking at this bulk updates and getting any questions. So I don't know if either of you guys have had a chance to go through this design update, design issue yet. I don't see your carrots, so sorry.
Yeah, this is the first time.
Okay. So maybe is that something you guys want to do asynchronously and add your questions, or should we kind of do a high level explanation of it for this call just for your benefit? Happy to.
I believe the title is self-explanatory. I mean, we need to be able to click on checkboxes and do some actions with it. It will be either like dismiss, I believe, as the first stage, and then at some point we're going to add more change statuses, right? From dismiss to confirm to result and so on.
So we already have dismiss today, and that's the only one we have. So this is allowing us to do the other status changes.
Yeah, so it's extending the status changes. The bulk action itself, the select, is already in place. One thing that we are adding to the dismiss is a sub categorization. So are you dismissing it like because it's a false positive? Is there a mitigating control? So those are sort of predefined. And this is kind of one half of work that will eventually, we're bringing the same statuses and sub-statuses over into the vulnerability detail itself. Because right now we're just capturing the status changes. We're not capturing reasons and we're not being consistent. It's important for the security teams, but it's also important for our own scanner teams because they're not able to capture metrics on like false positive rates.
As far as I know, you can also dismiss vulnerabilities, not the vulnerabilities, but the findings from the pipeline security tab. But if that finding is already related with a vulnerability from the security dashboard, so dismissing that finding will dismiss the vulnerability as well. Do we have the same capability of selecting these subgroups in the pipeline security tab, like false positive or won't fix or whatsoever?
That is a great point. I know we have in the issue related to the dismissal of the vulnerability detail itself, we also are looking at that in the modal. I don't believe we have pipeline multi-select and dismiss right now, though, do we?
Don't believe so.
Don't think we do. Yeah, so we wouldn't be adding it to that view yet. I think this would be yet another thing to carry over. It's eventually migrating over the pipeline.
To that question, if we're going to enhance the dismissal to have reasons, would that need to be applied to the single vulnerability dismissal on the pipeline view?
Since it happens in a modal, I think there are designs that account for it in the modal there and in the MR view. That's in a separate issue.
Okay, that's a separate issue.
That is a separate future issue. It's kind of the other half to the work that's being done here. But good question.
And you just said that the display of these dismissal reasons is also a separate issue. That's not part of this as well?
Correct.
Just confirming it. Thank you. I just taken. And we can come back to this. I mean, clearly we'll want some folks from the front end team, but I wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that this is our next upcoming priority after the JIRA issue creation. I think our 13.5 milestone got a little bit shifted around when we moved away from the security widget, the MR security widget work. So we're picking up some work mid 13.5, which as long as things are refined and the team is comfortable with them, I'm comfortable with that. I don't know if Tiago is or not. So do you guys want, we can leave this one on the agenda to make sure that folks have more time to review it and that we have more voices to determine whether this is ready to be moved on to planning breakdown. Do you have any gut feelings though around our questions of are the requirements clear enough to understand the intent of the request? I just want to make sure that if any of these are a big no, we can work on getting an answer for them before we talk again. Do we understand the dependencies of the work to be accomplished? I don't think there's any work outside of our team or database changes or anything like that. Obviously documentation changes. I'm not sure about end-to-end testing changes. Those are two items that I want to keep putting forward earlier in the process. What are your guys' thoughts about end-to-end tests for something like this? I don't believe this is necessarily something that Will has covered today in an end-to-end test. And
Do we already have a process something like this, like having end-to-end tests?
So Will Meek is our SET, and from my conversations with him, he does own a set of end-to-end automated tests that run outside of the standard MR pipeline, but they run on a regular basis, and he handles the triage of those. So he's brought to our attention some production issues and stuff recently. I think we can improve and be more efficient about how that works and be more involved in it. But as of right now, the plan is to just mention him sort of at this planning breakdown time if we think that something is a large enough or warrants consideration for, or we think there already are end-to-end tests.
Okay.
And I think it'd be good to have Will maybe come to one of these calls because he is over all of Secure, and that includes Start Insights. We have a different SET for container security and Protect, just to make it, exciting. And then the other questions, research, Matt, the research solution validation. I think we should remove this question because if you're bringing something to planning breakdown, I think the assumption is that that's already been done. But our third question for planning breakdown is research and solution validation complete? I'm gonna assume that's a yes.
Sorry, which one are you looking
at? The third question we have for planning breakdown is research and solution validation complete? And then I have in italics up at the top, potentially remove this question. I guess I'm of the opinion that if something's made it to the planning breakdown stage to get to this point in the conversation, that you and Andy have decided that it's a customer need and that you're done with that? Yeah,
in fact, if we're looking at our process flow, that should happen first before anything reaches planning breakdown.
All right, so I'm just gonna take that question off. The less questions, the better. And then the last question then is it small enough to complete in one iteration? And again, I'm not asking for a concrete answer to all of this, but your gut feeling, if we weren't looking at anything else, do you feel confident that this would be an issue that we'd be able to do in one milestone?
Yeah, I believe in terms of backend, there's no work needed. Because it's already, the GraphQL allows you to send multiple, like in one request, to be able to do like bulk update or something like that. So we're already doing that for the dismiss. So no need for do any additional things for like resolving and other types of statuses for vulnerability, unless we find there's some kind of troubles in terms of the performance. So then we can improve it definitely. But as for now, I don't see any work for backend.
Okay, well that helps with how to move forward. We can take some of this asynchronously, I believe, with the front end team, and I will follow up on that.
There is one thing that might cause you to change your answer a little bit. So we are introducing the ability to undo the bulk action with this as well. So once you actually apply a dismissal or a status change, there's a little toast that pops up and you can hit the undo and revert that change.
Okay, so then, yeah, because right now we added the, maybe not the undo, but being able to bring the vulnerability back to, like, how is the state called? To the initial state.
Detected.
Detected, yeah. So yeah, definitely, if you want to undo, so that means removing all the comments, or are we going to save that information that it was, someone just reverted that to the previous state? In the
Yes.
vulnerability.
So this is, it's taking the last change and reverting that last change. So you may have, for instance, a mix of statuses. You could have some detected, some confirmed, maybe some remediated. Let's say you accidentally hit the button and hit dismiss and realize, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Everything should go back to the previous detected, confirmed, remediated, whatever state it was in before.
But would there be a record on that vulnerability to say that that accidental state change and undo took place? Or would it be like it never happened?
I don't think we need to keep a record of the undo itself, because you are just reverting something back to the state it was in before. So you've actually, it should look like there was no change to the system. You haven't actually moved the state anywhere.
So you want it to be actually transactional and just, it sounds like rolling back to transaction.
Pretty much.
So then I assume this will require some backend work, right, Alan?
Yep, that is true.
Yeah, because if we try to revert back the vulnerabilities one by one, maybe if there's a problem, we will end up like reverting, let's say 10 of them, and there will be like 5 of them not reverted. This will cause lots of problems.
Yeah, maybe for the initial for this release we can have everything without the undo, and then do the undo in the next release. So because I'm not sure if we'll be able with Jira and with this bulk update to do it both in one release. I'm not sure how it's our workload right now. I don't see lots of items, but yeah.
Sure. When we ask that question of can it fit in one release, I mean, I think that's more just a gauge of size. And that's why I always kind of preface it with if there's nothing else on your plate, right?
What about just like showing a confirmation message to the user, like, hey, are you really sure you want to like dismiss X amount of vulnerabilities? I mean, if the user clicks yes, then I don't know, like, because this will put lots of, how you say, complexity on the backend side. And
I feel like Alexander asked that question early on because we did get this request around the undo for the bulk dismissal. And I know he posed that question back to Valerie and Andy, and I honestly can't recall the answer. I think people are very accustomed to the undo thanks to Google.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was really a good suggestion, but we'd still like to move forward with the undo.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't want to rule it out. I think, Mehmet, actually, would you? No, I would say, could you leave that as a comment for Andy on the issue? And
yeah,
I think that's a fair explanation, because you're right. We'll have to keep a record of that transaction that we can roll back, as opposed to just not taking the action until we ask the user, did you really mean to click the thing? And there is some, I think there is precedent for that too, like issue templates. If you've ever opened an issue and you've changed the template, it actually asks you, do you want to apply this before you actually go forward with it? So I think there are definitely UI or UX paradigms that we can draw from.
I think that particular question and suggestion from Mehmet puts a lot of, or there's a lot of weight on that. If we can move forward with a confirmation instead of an undo, it's a much different estimate on how much work it is. So Mehmet, can you make sure that you add that question to the security or to the design issue versus just this agenda? Thank you, I appreciate it. I don't want that to get lost.
Okay. Well, in either case, I would say it's a good place to cut it though with the undo.
Yeah.
We don't have the undo today, so just adding the additional states is the most important part.
And even if just adding, even if they still want the undo of adding the confirmation as a safety measure until that's in place, I don't want to speak for the full front-end team, but I don't feel like that would be a huge effort. So, and we are at the end of our half hour. I'm glad we made it through this issue. We've got a couple other ones listed here that I'll just move forward to next week. And we do have an office hours later this week for other people to come. Like Philippe has been coming to this meeting a lot and giving us reports of things that he wants to see improvements on or where he thinks there might be problems. So making sure we still have a forum for that doesn't take up this whole call. We want to make sure that we're still moving forward with our planning breakdown and our pre-milestone tasks, but still giving people a place to come and ask those questions. So if you can attend that, I think I've alternated them between earlier and later in the day. It would be helpful to have engineers from the team there to help answer questions too. So they're on the threat management sub-department calendar. It's a little plug for that there. All right, thank you everyone for your time. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.